Hi there, it's Tracy, and I'm going to show you how to paint these jellyfish. This is a full voiceover acrylic painting tutorial. Let's get started. This is an 11 by 14 inch canvas, and I'm going to use my 3/4 inch wash brush that's already been dipped in the water and patted dry. So you don't want it dripping wet, but you still want it kind of moist to get the paint flowing when you load the paintbrush with the color. I'm starting with the color Mars Black, and you can see a preview in the upper right of what the background looks like. It's a gradient of black and blue and white. The lower part is darker, the upper left part is lighter. And we're painting diagonal strokes. So that's what I'm doing right now with the Mars Black. I'm using that full width of the brush. This whole lower left area is going to be painted black, and we'll be blending the other colors in here in just a bit. So when we get to, I filled up almost the whole lower left quadrant of the canvas with the black. You could just kind of estimate that. You don't have to make it precisely how I did it. But then we're going to load it in the ultramarine blue. So I didn't even rinse the brush. If there's too much black on your brush, you could wipe it off with a paper towel and load the blue. And so we're going to continue this diagonal direction with the paint with the ultramarine blue, and it's going to blend with the black. And that black is such a strong color that sometimes it's even hard to get it to blend with any color. So if that's the case, you may want to just rinse your brush off all the way and just load with the blue so that you can really get that blue to blend. But our ultimate goal here is to get it so it's starting to be lighter in sort of the upper regions of the water area. But of course that black is still wet and it's on there, so it's blending in there and it's creating some streaks in the color, which is nice, and that's kind of what we want. It's a underwater picture. And then I can take some more blue and I could blend it back down into that black, but I don't want to completely cover all that black. I still want it to exist, but it's still helping it to blend by dragging some of that blue back down in there. So I'm going to keep doing this. There is a lot of this ultramarine blue in this background. I'm just going to keep working the paint. The video is speeding up 50% right now, so do take your time and press pause if you need to. In reality, my hand is not moving that fast. Okay, so I mean, what I'm doing is just I'm continuing to add layers of blue, making sure it blends with the black, deciding how much of that black streak that I like, with the black streaky look sort of thing going on. If I wanted to, I could even grab some more Mars Black and I could add some more Mars Black in there if I wanted it to be even a little darker than what it is. But after this step, we want to completely rinse our brush off because we're going to transition to this white here. And our brush is loaded with this blue and white, and so blue and black. And so if we added the white now, it would turn to gray automatically. So at this point, you want to rinse your brush off, kind of pat it dry, and then load it in the titanium white. Now you want to gradually add that white in there. Just be very gentle at first because titanium white is such an opaque and strong color. We don't want it to, we're not trying to get it to take over. We want that white to blend nicely with that blue. So very gently brush that over the blue and you'll see kind of what happens. We still want that sort of blended streaky look as if maybe there's some light shining through at the top of the water area. And if you need to, you could add a little bit more blue in there. So if you don't like how light it looks, dip your brush in some ultramarine blue and blend that in there. And that kind of helps with the transition. So this upper right area of the canvas is a little bit darker than the upper left area. I'll be doing more white in the upper left area where that corner is. Just gently blend that down into the painting. And then let's fill up this left corner here. And I'm going to use more white. And there happens to be some ultra on my brush too. And actually, I just dipped it in the ultra and just kind of blend it up there. And I wanted this corner to be a little bit brighter. And so I added more white and blue in this area, and there's really no black streaks going on in this area right now, but I still want to get it to blend so it transitions nicely. So this area where it transitions to the blue and black, I'm just going to brush over it like 50 times to get it to blend, and then brush over it up in the upper left. So just keep going with that. Keep adding your colors in there, maybe a streak of blue and a streak of black. Just be careful not to over blend because it may end up all being the same solid color everywhere. And we like that color variation in the background. Okay, when you are done with the background, you want to let it dry. You can use a hair dryer to dry it, or wait about 30-45 minutes and come back. But here is my dried version of the painting, and we're going to draw the jellyfish with chalk. I also have a traceable that you can print out and use if you don't want to draw the jellyfish free-handed with the chalk. But the chalk is nice because it can erase easily. So we're going to do this big jellyfish first, and it's kind of going at an angle here in the upper left corner. And I'm going to start by drawing an arc with my chalk. So this arc is going in the upper left corner area, and it's kind of going diagonally at an angle. So when I draw, I do several lines and I kind of sketch it out until I sort of get the line that I want. Okay. And then after you do your rainbow line, we're going to do about 5 bumps that are going diagonally. Okay, so I'm just kind of extending that arc there so I can fit my 5th bump in there. But I did 5 bumps, and then underneath those bumps I did a wavy line because you can kind of see the under part of this jellyfish. So a wavy line that sort of connects. Okay, and then we have our sort of arc shapes that meet in the middle. So they go from the bump line and they curve and go in the middle. It kind of reminded me of drawing a pumpkin right there. So for the little jellyfish, this one's kind of a more simpler shape. It's still the arc. It's smaller, but it's going in the opposite angle direction. And then you can see what happens when you mess up. It's super easy. Just dip your finger in, make sure it's clean water, and it erases very nicely. And then do the bumps on the bottom and do the arc lines as well. Now, I did go ahead and draw the tentacles, and I guess they're called the oral arms. So the thicker ones are called the oral arms. That's what I'm doing right now. So it's kind of a shape. It's a wavy shape, and it has a form to it. So I did 3. One of them was overlapping under one. And then I did the tentacles, and I really liked this spiral sort of thing. I made it kind of whimsical to have some of the tentacles spiral. So I did that. I'm going to do the same thing for the smaller jellyfish. Draw the shape of the oral arms, and then draw a few tentacles. Now, you'll see when I paint this in that I don't actually follow my exact drawing when I paint it in. It's more of a guideline with the chalk. And you can, if you feel confident, you could actually just not draw the oral arms and the tentacles, and you can just draw the shape of the bells and then paint the oral arms and tentacles free-handed without drawing them in, because the chalk gets kind of messy when you'll see in a second. So we're going to do the bell shape of the large jellyfish first. And I loaded my palette in white, medium magenta, and dioxazine purple. And I'm using the 4 round brush. Okay. I'm going to start with titanium white, and I'm going to start at the top. Okay. The top part of this is the brightest part. And I'm going to do these sort of strokes that are going from the top, and I'm stroking downwards. Okay. I call this a starburst stroke because it kind of fades out when you stroke down. It's pretty opaque, and you press firm with the brush to start, and then when you stroke downward, you kind of release the pressure so it fades out a little bit. Okay, so there's our white, and then we're going to do some white on wet on wet blending. Load your brush in the medium magenta without rinsing that brush. Okay, and so we're going to blend. And I wish my camera angle was better here, but so you can see the blending, but here, maybe you can see it better right here. So the pink is going to blend with the white as I work downwards. And if it's not blending right away, we can always go back and add a little bit more white, and I do that. So we're going to do that for the entire sort of top middle area of this jellyfish. So same kind of starburst stroke. It starts out kind of opaque and it sort of fades out as you go down. I loaded my brush back in the white so that I can blend it in there. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm using that white to blend it back into the pink. Okay, there, I moved my hand. So that white blended back in the pink, and you can see that sort of starburst sort of thing that's going on with the white blending with the pink. And then I'm going to just continue my way down. I'm going to do the outward area with that pink. Try to stay in the lines with my jellyfish. I'm also trying to erase the chalk as I'm painting it. So if you paint over chalk, it'll erase. But if there's still chalk showing through, once the painting is dry, then we can go back with a clear wet brush and erase all those chalk lines. Okay, so I'm just kind of continuing this white and pink combination here. And I'm going to go ahead and paint the entire under part of the jellyfish. So that shape that we have in the under part area, that's going to be painted pink. This pink is kind of a not so opaque color. I'd say maybe like a 50% opaque color. So I don't want it to be too solid. I still kind of want to have some of that blue showing through. So I'm only going to do one coat here, and I don't want to add too much paint on there. So it's still kind of see-through. So I'm painting that shape in that whole under area. And notice how I left the bottom part of the jellyfish blank for now. Okay. I'm going to erase. Actually, I'm going to touch that up because my hand was on that chalk when I was painting it. So I'm just touching it up real quick. But let me show you what happens when you erase the chalk. You just use your finger, and with the water, it'll easily erase the chalk. But it gets kind of messy, especially if you lay your hand on where you drew the lines with the chalk. Okay, so what we're going to do next is, and I didn't even rinse my brush for this, but I loaded it with the dioxazine purple. It's a very strong dark color, so it's going to take over fast, but we're only using it to sort of outline the jellyfish. So I did the purple on the bottom bumps, and I'm going to do the purple on that bottom wavy line that we drew. Okay. So this is just helping us sort of define the shape and outline it. So outline the bottom shape area with the dark purple using the round brush, using just the tip of the brush so you can get your nice thin line. And then I'm going to go ahead and outline the rest of that jellyfish. So I'm going to outline the outer edge of it. And this part of the outer edge. I notice how I didn't go all the way to the top with that. I kind of stopped when I got to the white. It kind of faded it out. So here on the bottom, it's dark and it fades out. To get that faded out look with your stroke, you start out with more pressure and you release the pressure when you get to that point so that it becomes lighter and faded. That's just a brush sort of skill that you sort of acquire when you feel comfortable with using the brush. So we have this area of the jellyfish that's still kind of blank at the bottom. I want to add a little bit of pink in that area. Of course, my brush still has the purple and white on it, so I may pick up other colors in there. But I'm going to kind of gently add some more color in that area that I left blank of. And so again, I know my hand is covering, but you'll see what I did once I move it. But I'm just adding some paint to that area on the bottom. There we go. And just a little bit of paint because it's I still want it to be sort of see-through. I still want to see some of that water still showing through. And so I want to leave some of it blank. So I'm actually pressing very lightly with my brush. I'm holding it very lightly so that the mark that it makes is kind of see-through and very light and feathery. Because that kind of creates the effect of the jellyfish because it's sort of see-through and not completely opaque. Okay. I am going to go ahead and take this white and brighten up the top part real quick. So I just loaded my brush in the white and I'm going to add some more white, blend it down. So still the same kind of style of stroke. It's heavy at first and it kind of feathers out and goes light as I stroke downwards. And I'll go back with some more pink and blend that in there. Just keep in mind, the more color you keep adding to it, the more opaque it will become. And if you like the see-through look, then try not to add so much paint on there. Just be very gentle and light with the brush. Okay, and I'm just taking that dioxazine purple and kind of defining some of those bump lines real quick. Okay, so I think that is it for the bell part of this jellyfish. I'm going to rinse my brush off. I know my water is not completely clear, but I still trust myself here. I'm using the clean brush to clear off the chalk that's still showing through. I usually get impatient, don't want it to dry before I want to clear that chalk off, but that's what I did. If you're going to do that, just be very careful not to have the paint run with the water that you apply to the canvas from erasing the chalk. And so I'm just doing a little bit of a touch up there. And sometimes it's hard to tell yourself to stop and go on to the next area of the painting because you want to keep touching up the same area. But so what I'm going to do next is this is a tiny round brush, also known as a spotter brush, a detail brush. There's lots of names for it, but it's a round brush that has a very, very tiny point to it, tiny bristles. But I'm going to use that to paint dots on the bottom part of my jellyfish. So I'm doing this with just titanium white. And this kind of adds a nice eye-catching pop to the painting. The video is going to speed up about 50% here, and just letting you know that I'm doing the white dots on the bottom two bumpy areas of the jellyfish, and I'm also going to do it on the left curve. If you wanted to add more dots on some of the other curves, you can. I guess I decided not to do that. I just did it on the left curve. And I also did it on some of the tentacles, but that will come later. Okay, so we're done with our tiny detail spotter brush for now. We're going to rinse that off, set it to the side, and we're going to go back to our number 4 round brush. We're going to do our oral arms and tentacles. And so we're going to use the color dioxazine purple and titanium white. So you see I started painting with the dioxazine. You can see how dark that is, but when you grab the white blends beautifully with that purple color. And so we're going to call this double loading our brush in purple and white, painting that oral arm and letting the colors blend themselves on the canvas. There's no real rhyme or reason where I want my lighter part to go. I just want some nice color variation of the purple and the white sort of blending together. So essentially we're just painting the shape of that oral arm. You don't have to stay in the lines of your chalk if you want it to go a different direction because you changed your mind. That's fine. And just kind of blend those colors, and so that purple and white gets some color variation. Since some of these are overlapping, this one's going to be slightly darker, and it's going to go behind, actually it's going to go over this one. So I'm going to paint it and I'm going to have it go overlapping this one. And it stands out because it's either lighter or darker or a different tint of that purple so that it stands out. Okay. Another thing that's happening when I'm painting this, you kind of create that texture in there. So if you wiggle your brush a little bit side to side, it creates that texture. So I'm not just stroking downwards, I'm actually gently wiggling it left and right, and that moves the paint to create that texture, that sort of edge that you see on the oral arms. It creates the edging to make it look like the texture of the jellyfish. So I'm just going to keep doing that, painting each of those shapes in there. Make sure that it's starting from underneath the jellyfish, so make sure it's going inwards, so it overlaps that area on the in part of the jellyfish, if that makes sense. Okay, and just kind of control how light or dark you want your areas to be based on if it's overlapping or if it's underneath it. Just controlling how much white or purple you add to the brush is how we control those different tints of that purple. And then if the chalk is really bothering you, like it bothers me, if you feel brave enough at this point, you can clear your brush off, get some just water on there, and kind of erase the chalk lines. I know my water is very purple right now, but it didn't seem to affect the painting at all. It still erased my chalk. So I'm just gently going in there. Just be really careful not to have your water run into the paint, and then it'll start dripping everywhere. Okay. So, but I'm usually not patient with wanting to get those chalk lines out of the way because I want that instant gratification. I want to know what it looks like without that chalk. So I'm going in there and cleaning it up with the chalk. And then also I mentioned earlier, if those chalk lines are really bothering you, you can erase all of them first, let it dry, and then paint your tentacles and oral arms so you don't have to worry about the chalk. The chalk is just a kind of a guideline, a visual of what it would look like. Okay, so we have the oral arms. Now we're going to paint the tentacles. These are just the lines, the spiral lines. And I did those with white and magenta. So that's medium magenta and titanium white. Same thing, double load. And this paint didn't work out the first time, so I loaded it more in there. So double load in pink and white and paint your spiral. And you can see how not following your chalk line, what happens. So I erased my little chalk line in there very carefully so that I can get my one line painted. drying it off real quick because I used a lot of water to paint that, because water will run into the paint and it'll start dripping everywhere, and you don't want that. Okay, so I'm getting this spiral thing going with that pink, and I'm just kind of forming it with the brush. I can change the thickness of it if I want some different variations of thick and thin with these tentacles. So some areas are just slightly more thicker, and then some areas are slightly more thinner. That variation kind of gives it that cool visual. Okay, and so we're gonna do this one. The purple may not be dry all the way. Actually, what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to erase this line so that when I paint it, I can kind of go my own direction without worrying about where that chalk is. So that's just a baby wipe that I had in my hand. Baby wipes are actually really good they're good at erasing chalk, but they're also good at erasing mess ups on if you paint something you mess up and you want to erase it instantly before it dries. Okay, so I have the pink and the white, and I want to do sort of my own thing that I did not draw with the chalk. And that's what I'm doing. I'm adding more wavy lines. I want to do another spiral one over here with the pink and the white. And that pink and white should stand out against any purple because it is overlapping the oral arm right now. And so it should show up because it's a little brighter. I'm adding a little bit more white in there, and it's a different color. And I triple loaded my brush. I even grabbed some purple in there. So I have pink, white, and purple on this one. And this one's going off in its own direction over here. I think I'll do one more sort of sticking out that way because I like the look of those going sort of the opposite direction in there. And I'm just touching up some of one of my oral arm right there. And so that's what you can do with your pink, purple, and white. Just do sort of touch-ups in there if you wanted to add. I did another tentacle right there. Okay, and just do as many as you'd like until you have enough. And then I went back because I really liked the effect that those dots create. So I got my spotter brush again, and I'm just adding some random dots in there on some of the oral arms, just on one side of them. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. On the left side of some of the oral arms, I'm doing the dots, and I believe I did it to some of the tentacles as well. But I'm actually going to go silent here for just a bit as I do that. Okay, so we're done with the purple jellyfish and we're going to move on to the green one. And the green one is the exact same technique that I did with the purple one, only different colors. So I loaded my palette in brilliant yellow green, deep green permanent, titanium white. And you see me using a baby wipe to erase all of the tentacles and oral arms of the little one just because it's a smaller area and I felt like the chalk was going to get a little messy in that area, so I decided to erase it. And this is the exact same technique that I did, only it's on a smaller scale. So we're using our round brush and white, starting at the top, doing those starburst strokes, stroking downwards and curved so that it forms that shape. So just by curving that, your stroke is creating form because you're curving it. So, and then loading it in that lighter color. So this is the brilliant yellow green. Just like when we added the magenta and blended it into the white, we're using the brilliant yellow green to blend it into the white. And so this jellyfish actually ended up a bit more opaque than the other one, and I was okay with that because this green is a sort of a really opaque color actually. But that was okay. So I'm blending that green into the white simply by painting over it. So that wet on wet blending, it blends itself on the canvas when you paint over it. And sometimes you have to just do your stroke about 5 times to get it to blend. Sometimes it doesn't blend right away on the first stroke. Never once am I rinsing my brush here, so I'm going right to that dark color. So in the same way I did the dark purple to outline the bumps and the lines, I'm using the dark green this time to outline the bumps and the line for the bottom one. So outline the bumps and do your curved lines so that it defines the shape of the little jellyfish. So pretty much you're just outlining it with the green and making sure you're outlining your bumps, the lines as well. And then the bottom area, I'm actually going to do this to the bottom area with the dark green. I'm taking that dark green and I'm blending it upwards into those lighter green areas. And so that it kind of gives it a different effect here. So this is that deep green permanent. And I'm just working those colors in there, getting them to blend. This is a smaller jellyfish, so it's not as easy to do the blending in the same way that we did it on the larger one. Okay. So you can see we have our little jellyfish, the bell shape of it finished. And then adding some more white at the top as well. Okay, I'm going to jump straight into our oral arms. These are, I'm going to use the deep green permanent, double loaded in either the white or the light green, whichever one that you would like to use. I'm going to use the white to give it that two-toned sort of look. And so just do the same technique that you did with the purple one again. And with the spiral thing, you can double load in the white and whichever green you would like to use to get it to be brighter than the oral arms. Okay. And then you can do the dot thing as well with the little guys. So you can get your spotter brush out and do the dots. I did the dots the same way. So I did the dots along the bumps on the bottom and also some in the oral arms and tentacles. I did some white dots here on one of the lines. I guess it would look kind of cool if you did more white dots on some of the lines of the jellyfish. I only did it on one of the lines on each of them. Actually, I did two of the lines on the green one. So here is the point of the painting where I'm just doing touch-ups. I'm just adding some more pink in there, and it kind of helps if you take a step back and you kind of squint your eyes and see, okay, well, what needs to be brighter, or I want more pink right here, so I'm going to add more pink right here. This is sort of the artistic sort of touch in your painting, or I want to brighten this up here. So that's what I'm doing right now. And right here, maybe I want these arms. I really like how these tentacles look, so I extended them and made them sort of fade out, and that kind of gave it that extra sort of whimsical effect. And I did that with the green one too, and I thought, okay, I really like how that looks, so I extended those arms too. But that's kind of personal to your painting, so you can look at your painting and kind of see where you think you need to touch up whatever color. But the last step in this painting is doing the bubbles, and this was my favorite part of the painting because I love painting bubbles. And so I'm just using my spotter brush here, and I'm just painting circles. These are not fancy bubbles, they're just circles with a standard little highlight line. And some of my circles are solid, so some of the smaller circles are filled in all the way, and a variety of shapes gives it that sort of artistic look. They're not all the same size. Some are filled in solid, some are not. I don't recommend filling the big ones in solid, but the really tiny ones you can fill in solid. They're all kind of a uniform because they're all going in this diagonal direction. So I only put them in that diagonal that goes from the lower left to the upper right, and that is the direction that the bubbles are going in. I didn't do any in the lower left, upper right. I didn't do any in the upper left, but I did a few sort of around the green one. But that was just my choice in painting the bubbles. But if you wanted to put bubbles all over the painting, you can do that. That's up to you. And just adding more. Some of them are in clusters. They're the little ones are kind of bunched together. But that's it for my bubbles. And again, some more touch-ups on my jellyfish. But that's it. This tutorial has come to its conclusion, and I really enjoyed painting these jellyfish. I hope that you enjoy too. Thanks for watching. Sign your name at the bottom, show it off. If you love doing this ocean theme painting, you can check out some other ones on my website. I have quite a few ocean theme designs.